So, guys, let's get serious now. Yeah? I don't sound like a school teacher, though I am a school teacher, but I don't want to sound like that. Let's understand something very, very crucial today, which I believe will transform all of your lives today. Now, I want you to imagine this very, very carefully. And please be with me for some time. Imagine you are at a local coffee shop. Imagined? Yes? Perfect. But you don't remember where you left your keys. Has that happened with somebody? Yes? A lot of times happened with me as well. So imagine you are at a coffee shop and struggling to remember where you left your keys. And then the local barista calls your name and the perfect cup of coffee appears in front of you. Anybody imagining that with me? Yes? How is the coffee? Cappuccino, latte? How is the coffee? Just coffee, perfect. You take a sip and boom, neuroplasticity happens. Your brain rewires itself and all of a sudden you remember where those keys were. Hua hai aisa? It has happened, right? So how does it happen? Is it like a miracle? ऐसे ही हो जाता है like a miracle? Yes or no? No. It is not a miracle, it's a science. So here I am to talk to you about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity might sound fancy to you, but essentially it means that your brain has this amazing power to rewire itself. So when it rewires itself, you can learn, unlearn, and do amazing things with your brain. I'll explain you how. Neuroplasticity is not only responsible for how we learn, adapt, but overcome obstacles in our lives. I want you to imagine a problem in your life that you have faced recently. And just stay with that problem. Just stay with that problem. And now imagine, how did you overcome that problem? How do we overcome as humans? We overcome by learning, unlearning, and adapting our behavior with different circumstances. This is what is the amazing power that we have in the form of neuroplasticity. Let me ask you this question now. Have you ever come across a moment in your life when you finally understand something? Has that happened? Yes? When you finally understand something that's been puzzling you since ages. And then all of a sudden, your brain tells you the answer that yes, the answer is right here, and you were struggling with this since ages. How does that happen? How does that happen? It is not a miracle. It's your brain which is becoming more and more plastic and flexible and adapts to the new environment you are in. So why is this an aha moment, right? We consider that neuroplasticity is essentially an aha moment for your brain. Why is this an aha moment? You might believe that this is something which happens normally in all our lives, but it is not. Let me tell you that. Yes, it is an aha moment. Why? Because neuroplasticity helps our neurons in the brain to rewire, to refire. We might not realize this, but let me give you an example. When you are here in this auditorium, listening to me, and I'm speaking to you right in front of you, your brain is at work. It's creating new wires, and the neurons are refiring in itself. And it's happening, believe me. Hence, neuroplasticity is, yes, an aha moment for you. And it is not limited to learning, unlearning, or adapting. Like I said, it's also equally responsible for how you overcome obstacles in your life. Imagine that problem again. Go back to the problem and how you overcame that problem. Was it something that you did out of the box? Yes, you did out of the box. Let's look at some studies now. In the late 1960s, the neuroplasticity term was specifically introduced to talk about the changes in the brain of adults. And a very basic example that I can give you is stress. How many of you are feeling stressful right now? How many of you are feeling stressful right now? Okay, so stress, let me tell you, has two kinds, positive and negative. Here, what we talk about is stress which helps your brain to rewire. So imagine that stress which we were talking always in a negative context is now has become positive. And why it has become positive? Because that stress is a strong stimuli for our brain to create that cognitive load. And the brain is in a high cognitive demand and tells you that I need to do something to get it done. Hence, a lot of studies that have been done for the concept of neuroplasticity have realized that stress helps your brain to rewire and refire. Let's look at one of the example. Hippocampus. Anybody who is aware about hippocampus? What is hippocampus? No? Okay, this is something I think very technical and corresponds to the brain. I'll tell you what it is. Hippocampus is a part of the brain. It's a region, it's a part of the brain area, which is responsible for creating and storing memories. All of you here right now in the auditorium are in the process of creating a lot of memories right now, which is done by hippocampus. When you go back home in the evening, whatever you retrieve in the mind in hippocampus, you will try to recall all of that. So hippocampus is that area of the brain that stores, creates, and recalls memories for you. That is why we feel nostalgic. So hippocampus, as a part of the brain, plays a very essential role in neuroplasticity. Why? Because it transforms our experiences. Imagine a stressful situation happening in your life. You are under pressure. Your brain is on a cognitive overload to do something. And hippocampus, as a part of the brain, regulates the stress response. So it brings your body, your mind back to a state of equilibrium. Imagine we all are at stress in some or the other point in time, but we don't keep hanging there. We come back to the state of equilibrium, isn't it? Or we keep hanging in stress. We don't hang. So when we come back to the state of equilibrium, this is what it is, regulation. And this regulation is done by hippocampus. Neurons in the prefrontal cortex. Where is the prefrontal cortex? Right here on the forehead. And what does it do? It helps you to solve problems. It helps you to make decisions. Whether you want to buy dress A or dress B is a decision made by your prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex and the neurons associated under this area are so plastic and flexible that it can really make a new shape in your brain. A lot of studies have been done in this area to understand what happens exactly when this refiring happens in the brain. So what happens? The studies show that when there is a change in the neurons happening, either in the hippocampus or prefrontal cortex, wherever is it, but in the brain, these change your experiences. Let me ask you a question. When you overcame something in your life which was very stressful, does that change you as a person? And the answer is yes. It changes all of us, me, you, everybody. And how does that change happen? This change happens because of neuroplasticity. But we don't understand that because nobody ever taught us that. Right? So, the brain's neuroplastic capacity is so essential for us to survive that without that, we cannot survive. And brain areas like hippocampus help us to regulate the stress response and bring us back to the state of equilibrium. Otherwise, we would be hanging in stress. Now, let's understand what all you can do for that. How many of you here are facing and struggling to increase your attention span. How many of you? I'm sure, yes, many of you. Thanks to the mobile and the laptops, but the attention span is declining day by day. Here's what you can do to increase your attention span through neuroplasticity. Number 1, cognitive training. What is cognitive training? Cognitive means brain, of course, right? So cognitive training means doing some activities, some tasks that helps your working memory to function as effectively as possible. Now, what is working memory? That part of the brain where, for example, you are in the auditorium. What is working right now for you? It's prefrontal cortex. What is working right now for you is hippocampus. What is working right now for you is neuroplasticity. So cognitive training is very essential, where you constantly engage your brain into any activity that you want. It could be solving a crossword puzzle. It could be Sudoku. It could be just remembering your to-do lists. And that is all. These simple activities will help your brain to rewire and refire. Our brain has a very limited capacity when it comes to the overload. Our brain cannot take the overload. So what to do? What do we do in that case? When there is a case of cognitive overload and we are under stress, what happens? What happens when we are under stress? Either we flee or we fight. How many of us flee? Bhag jate hain, escape. How many of us flee? Thank you. Okay, so all of us fight then, I believe. So a lot of fighters here, thank you so much. So when we talk about fleeing and fighting, that is the basic stress response that our body takes us. But the interesting part is that this overload does not stop us. Rather, we survive it. How? We survive it through neuroplasticity. So one activity that you can do every day and become a part of this process is always engage into a lot of creative tasks. Always engage into a lot of tasks which involve progressive cognitive overload, where you are not only doing the easy tasks which you know, but also the difficult ones slowly and eventually. Why? Because the reason is simple. It will help your brain to refire. But wait, neuroplasticity does not stop here. Why? Because there have been numerous studies which tell us that this amazing power that we have as human beings will help us and can help us to also cure and treat illnesses. Let me give you some examples. How many of you have heard about ADHD? Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Thank you. So, when we talk about ADHD and also Alzheimer's, commonly seen in the geriatric populations, what happens? In cases of ADHD or Alzheimer's, where the cognitive overload is too much and the cognitive function is not doing effectively, in that case, many studies have revealed that neuroplasticity techniques like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, or neurofeedback, or mindfulness training exercises can go a long way. And we can actually not only decrease the symptoms of Alzheimer's and ADHD, but also we can cure them eventually. How many of you here struggle to speak in public? I know most of you don't raise hands, but I can understand. So when you struggle to speak in public, what do? We watch more videos maybe, right? But I'll tell you one easy technique. Engage into more of practical exposure, which will help you to reinforce the same behavior again and again and again. It's like imagining a child who is just riding a bicycle. Imagine, when a child rides a bicycle, what happens? Initially, the first step is very shaky, right? The child feels awkward, fumbles, and might trip down. But what will happen? After repeated attempts and after repeated reinforcements that you give to your brain, the brain understands it that now I have to do it in this way. And don't assume this as a normal phenomena. No. This is not a normal phenomena. This is something very unique that we have as humans, that we can train our brain to actually do something in the correct manner. And how does this happen? Through repeated reinforcements. One of the most important technique that we have to remember is the correct programming of the brain, which is why I always mention about neuro-linguistic programming, which is what? Which is the programming of the brain in such a manner that you can reshape it. And when you rewire, reshape the neurons, your experiences change, your lives change. And how many of us here want our lives to be changed? Everybody. Everybody here wants their experiences to be changed. Neuroplasticity is the key. One of my books that talks about speak up, stand out, weaving your personal brand through words also talks about how language plays a key role here. So this is something very important. One of the ways in which neuroplasticity you can increase is through learning a language. How many of you here are bilingual, multilingual? Okay. Let me give you one small example. When you are bilingual or multilingual, your brain processes information very differently as compared to a monolingual. Surprisingly, we don't know till date that a language can impact our brain, but yes, it does. Many studies have shown, and many scans like PET scans and MRI scans have shown that there is greater gray matter density in the brain, which means what? Which means effective processing of information in the brain that happens for people who know more than one languages or who know multiple languages. A lot of studies have also shown that your brain regions like Broca's and Wernicke's areas, which is exactly here on the left hemisphere of the brain, increases its activity immensely. And the neurons, they take a different shape altogether. You know what's the most remarkable and interesting part here? Is that when one part of the brain or one neuron stops functioning, the other neuron takes up. It's like they interchange the responsibilities. How amazing is that? Without us realizing that it really happens, but yes, it does. So our neurons actually interchange the responsibilities and their functioning without our realizing. What are some of the positive effects that neuroplasticity can offer to us? The effects lie in these 4 major brain areas. Prefrontal cortex right here on the forehead. Hippocampus I spoke about, which is responsible for memories. Temporal lobe, responsible for hearing. What do we hear? That information is being processed by the brain and we can understand it through temporal lobe. And then motor cortex. These 4 brain areas are very crucial when it comes to neuroplasticity. Now the question is, how can I improve my neuroplasticity? How many of you here are curious about this question? Okay. Some small tips. Number 1, learn any language, musical instrument, or a sport. Rather, a new skill, I would say. Engage into learning a new skill as soon as possible, as effectively as possible. It will help your brain to rewire. Focus on mindfulness exercises. What are mindfulness exercises? Deep breathing exercises, which helps your brain and nervous system to regulate the stress response. And so you will not flee, but might be possible you'll fight of it. Engage into some creative activities and bring novelty. And that novelty doesn't have to be something very major or significant in our lives, but as minor as sitting on the other table when having a dinner. It can be as minor as that. But that breaking the pattern and creating novelty is essential for all of you. But remember, neuroplasticity is not always positive. Many effects can be negative too. And how we can see that these effects have gone negative? When we engage into addictive compulsive behaviors through reinforcements. So here, very crucial to remember is that neuroplasticity can also go wrong when we engage into repetitive maladaptive behaviors. Number 2, stress and chronic anxiety. Of course, stress is something which rewires your brain, but what if you are under heavy stress? So heavy stress or chronic anxiety can actually give a negative impact on the brain. And last is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is that feeling and that negative thinking pattern in the brain that I want to do something, but I am not able to do that. And a state of helplessness which is now learned by your brain. When I say that the state of helplessness being learned by the brain, it means the brain has learned that I have to be helpless. So these effects can create a negative impact on neuroplasticity. Now, what do we learn from here? What do we learn? We learn that it's inevitable, it's essential that we as human beings have to embrace this power of neuroplasticity that we have so that we can transform our lives, our experiences, our futures. I have done it for me. The question is, how do you shape yours? Thank you. Thank you so much.